Dr. Theodonis again. We will be working with for our first textiles exercise. And essentially, the first thing I will do is delete the cube that we have there. I will press X to do that on the keyboard. And then from the menu, just select delete. We still have our cursor at the beginning of the coordinate system. So I will actually press Shift A to add not a mesh but a curve and a Bezier curve. If you are wondering what keys I'm pressing again, you can take a look at the lower left part of the screen. I will press numpad 7 so I can go on to a top orthographic view. And with the curve selected, zoom in with my middle mouse button and press Tab to go into edit mode, which I can also do through the menu object and edit mode here. So this is essentially a curve, and we will try to start creating essentially a very basic weaving. And to do that, I will just select with circle, like so, or by pressing C, and then I get a more dynamic circle which I can play around with my middle mouse button. And by pressing the left mouse button and brushing against the curve, I can select it. And if I press double A, I can deselect. So these are essentially control points which I can move, as you can see here, by pressing G for grab, or I could extend the curve by pressing E for extrude, and I can create another curvature. The handles are essentially the ones that manipulate the tangent of the curve, right? So how does the curve kind of go and turn and be curvy essentially on a very basic level. You can change how these behave, but we won't go too much into it at the moment. What we will now try and do is create a very basic thread. But first, let's delete these two. And I only have one control point here, which I will select, and then with Shift S, allow me to go selection to cursor. So I just have one point to generate the curve, E to start a new one. Actually, I did that wrong because I put essentially all of the both the control points and the handles onto the cursor. What I should have done is grab the control point and then restrict it on the x-axis and press 1, -1 so that it goes in the center. It doesn't matter that you have to do it in the center. You could start where it was anyway. And then if I press E for extrude, I create a new one, and I'll take it X by 1, grab Y, another one over there, and then extrude again and go X 1, Y, grab Y -1. So I'll place it over there. And then I will select essentially these control points and change the curvature so that it is -90 as such. Select these handles and do the same, 90. Control point, select the top, grab Y and -0.5. So I'm trying to make more of a harmonious kind of curve. Select now that handle, grab X 0.5, and then grab X -0.5. grab y minus 0.5. So now I get more of a semicircle essentially, right? Now, I want to create essentially a continuous curve with this kind of idea. So I will also, if I shift and click, I can now control these. So what I'm trying to do now is move both of these handles half a meter up from that kind of idea. So I can either do it by each one, or I can use clever selection by saying I will control first, select first with shift and click both control points, then B with border select, select the handles, and then B with pressing shift and border select, deselect the control points because I don't want to move them. I only want to move the handles. Grab y 0.5. And I'm doing this because I will then select the whole curve, and while still in edit mode, this is important, right? So we're inside the object, we're handling the data of the object. Shift D, and then X to move by 2, and then Control M. Sorry, no, it didn't work. So I'll rotate it and go 180 degrees, then grab Y 0.5, minus 0.5. And you'll see now that I need to bring this control point to that one. So one of the easiest ways I can do that is either by enabling snaps. So I will click on this magnet here, and I will actually activate right next to it. So these are the snapping help and allows you essentially to have an object touch another object at particular geometry. I will do with vertex, but also add center and adds perpendicular. And let's see if this works now. And you'll see that I get a small circle that drives things, from control point to control point. So right like this, if I hit tab, I have a continuous curve that goes in that direction, but this doesn't have any kind of thickness. I also need to eliminate the double points here, but we'll do that later. What we need to do now is actually go and give this kind of thickness. And to do that, we will go to the object tab over here. And you'll see that we have essentially transform relations. Sorry, no, we don't need the object tab. We need to go to the curve actually. So in the data, that works at the level of the data. And you'll see that we have a 3D shape. So this can actually be manipulated in 3 dimensions, even though I did only a 2D. We'll go on to geometry, and we can play here with certain parts of our curve. So if I go on to perspective and I rotate, and you'll see here that I have an extrusion, right? If I go extrusion 2, I actually get a thickness from the curvature. But I'll go back to 0 because I want essentially a very clear round cross-section. So to do that, I'll select the cursor, put it somewhere else on the grid, and shift A, I will add another curve, but this time it's going to be a circle, right? So that's going to be my cross-section that is going to be applied to this curve. Now, this circle has a name. It's called Bezier circle. Bezier is the kind of type of curve we're using. But I will just click on there and name it CC or CAS, so as for cross-section. Um, Maybe I name it CS1. So if I have any more, I can go back to that. And what I'll do here is I will click on this curve, and where it says in geometry object, I will click on object to activate it and allow the CS1 to go in. And you'll see that directly the thickness of that, the cross section of that curve goes and becomes essentially a three-dimensional object. It looks like a pipe or a very, 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 very big, essentially, piece of thread. And to minimize this, to scale it a little bit, I will essentially select the CS1 object, hit Tab, um, make sure everything is selected with A, press S for scale, and then scale it to an appropriate size. Let's go with 0.2. And we now have essentially the basis of our work. And if you hit tab, you will see again the control points. You won't see the curve because the object is shaded, but you can essentially go back to wireframe. So we'll shift D, double this. Let me do that again. Constrain it on the x-axis, and then 50 x-axis, place it, and then move it. Shift and middle click is for panning. And just like that, I have a first weaving kind of thread that goes and creates my first object. So the next thing I'm going to do is, while I'm in object mode, I will hit Shift. Well, you remember potentially duplicates. So there are two ways to do duplicates. One is duplicate objects and duplicate linked. I will go with duplicate linked, which means I will go with Alt D or Option D. So Alt D means I'm creating a duplicate that can essentially have the same data. So you'll see that Bezier curve and Bezier curve 1 have the same data, right? So let me name this thread. And I will go on to side view. And I need to now decide how big is the distance between the two. And to do that, I'll need to kind of create the opposite direction. So I'll do that by Shift D. So I'm now creating a unique copy. Constrain it on the Z, press 2 for that direction, and then R for rotate. And I'll rotate around the y-axis. So that's 90 degrees minus, go on the side and then grab y and minus, sorry, no, grab z and minus 4. And let's see how that works for us. And we probably need it to be -1. Grab x1. And you'll see I have it in the wrong direction, right? Because the threads are actually going into the one another. So I will go on top with 7, rotate Z 180, and I get what I want, right? But what actually happens is that this linked object also needs to move by -2. So I'm getting now a very nice result, right? And with that kind of idea, right, select this one and then also create an Alt D. So I'll name this vertical and I'll name this horizontal and horizontal one. So I'll click on the vertical, Alt D on the X, grab X2. And again, I need to make sure this is sifted. I actually didn't do a good job of it because I only did it by 1, but if I do it by 2, then it works, right? So you see that everything kind of starts to fit. Um, so click on these two, Alt D, and then if I go Z4, and let's see if we are on the right track. Yes, it works out fine. And then select these two, and we go Alt D X4, and we are definitely right on the right track in terms of what we're creating. So these four, Alt D X8, Alt D X8, Alt D X8. Whereas if I have these four, Alt D Z, I pressed 4, which is wrong, right? So grab Z8 and still having these, Alt D Z8, Alt D Z8, and I get my first piece um, of a textile, right? Created from scratch. The beautiful thing with this is that if I go to my original circle by pressing Shift D for the window, press Tab to go into edit mode, and I scale it, you will see that it scales the whole thing, right? So if I scale it by 2, I get a much more elaborate object on what we're trying to do. There are ways to speed this up, but I wanted you first to create this, let's say by hand, without using any kind of modifiers. And then we'll see how with the modifiers exercise, you will be able to advance this on a better basis. See you in the next exercise.